Hi, this is a review of 10 graphic novels. Last year when I was trying to finish the 50 books challenge, I read quite a lot of graphic novels, a bit more than I usually do. I found some really good ones and some that I didn't like that much. I borrowed some of a friend and I discovered that there is a local library that has a massive amount of graphic novels, so basically went there and just picked up whatever looked good. Okay, let's get started with number 1, which is Kickass. I had seen the movie first and I've actually seen it a couple of times. I really enjoyed it. And this one actually has a movie cover. If you're not familiar with the story, it is about a boy who decides that he is going to become a superhero. You don't need to have special powers to become a superhero, and he has varied levels of success. And as it turns out, he's not the only one who's trying to be a superhero. I absolutely loved the drawing style. I also really enjoyed the black borders and the colors. It was pretty gory, lots of blood flying around as in the movie. I was especially impressed with how action was portrayed because there's quite a lot of fighting in here, so you need to be able to kind of portray that motion, which was done really well. Also, I should probably mention that the movie was actually based on this and not the other way around. The movie is a bit different from this story, and I think I would have actually preferred to read this first before seeing the movie. If you like blood and action and superheroes, then this might be the one for you. The second one is We Can Still Be Friends. This graphic novel is about basically all the ways in which the main character tries to get with a girl. Sometimes I have issues with the fact that there are so many graphic novels where the artist is really great at drawing and he doesn't quite know what to draw. So he'll take the story of his own life about how awkward he is and about how girls don't like him, and then that should be enough for the storyline, and it doesn't quite work out. I'm not saying that this is what happened with this book, but I see it quite a lot and I'm not a big fan of that. I wasn't the biggest fan of the drawing style and I kind of felt like the story wasn't really going anywhere, so this wasn't really for me. Number 3 is quite interesting. It is Twilight, the graphic novel, in 2 volumes. I remember hearing about this when I was a really big Twilight fan, but I never actually thought about buying this, and then I found them at the library. The drawings are absolutely beautiful. It is kind of manga-ish. I felt like a lot of the faces were quite similar, and also the characters didn't quite look the way I imagined it, but still very pretty anyway. It was an interesting use of color. Everything was black and white, but then sometimes there were scenes where red was also incorporated. For example, with Victoria's hair. It was also very, very close to the book. There were all these scenes that I vaguely remembered, but that weren't in the movie, which I'm quite familiar with. The balance of text and image was pretty good. There wasn't too much text, but I felt like it was a bit boring. It wasn't very creative. It was just like a very straightforward adaptation of the book. Here's another example of where they used some color, by the way. I really didn't like the way the text was set up. A lot of Bella's internal dialogue has kind of a flowery border around it, and the fonts that were used were just kind of cheesy. Number 4 is the entire Scott Pilgrim series, which I finally got to finish this year. I would have really liked to read the hardback color editions, but I could only get the black and white ones. I remember not being very impressed with the first one, but as I kept reading, it just kept getting better and better and so creative and so funny. In case you're not familiar with the story, it is about a boy who falls in love with a girl called Ramona Flowers, and he has to defeat all of her evil exes if he wants to keep dating her. While I was reading it, I had some issues trying to figure out who all the characters were. There was the character with the slightly chubby legs, and then there was the character with the freckles and the character with the glasses. I had to really pay close attention to all these different details. I read most of these on a bus or on the underground because it only takes about an hour to read every single one. Also, I got a lot of looks from boys while I was reading these, so that could definitely be part of the recommendation. I would definitely recommend Scott Pilgrim. It's also a great way to introduce people to graphic novels. Number 5 is Sense and Sensibility. I've read the book before. I really love the story. I've seen all the adaptations a couple of times, and I have to say that this one was very faithful to the book, but almost too faithful. I'm kind of discovering a problem with book to graphic novel adaptations. I feel like they didn't make the sacrifices that you would make if you were to turn it into a movie, so they try and keep every single part in, and I feel like sometimes that just doesn't work with graphic novels. As you can see, there's quite a lot of text in this. Even though I did enjoy it, mostly because I really like the story, I felt like it got very slow at times. The illustrations were really pretty, even though some of them had bobbleheads and really red cheeks all of the time. Also, Edward wasn't very attractive, which I guess he always is in the movies, and maybe he shouldn't be in the book. If you're a massive Jane Austen fan, then I might recommend this, but it is a bit slow. And to continue with the book adaptations, I have A Study in Scarlet, which is an adaptation of Sherlock Holmes. This graphic novel has some beautiful drawings and great use of color and shadow, and this one does have a really great balance between text and image, so there's not too much text. It can be difficult to follow sometimes, but I guess that is kind of the point of Sherlock Holmes. Basically, my only complaint about this graphic novel is Sherlock Holmes's butt chin. He has a massive butt chin, and it is kind of distracting, and in a lot of pictures it doesn't even fit in the frame. A thing that I really liked about this is that it has a flashback. I haven't read the original Sherlock Holmes story yet, at least I'm like halfway through, so I wasn't familiar with that part of the story, which made it really interesting. I would say that I'm definitely open to reading more of these Sherlock Holmes adaptations. Number 7 is The Adventures of Blanche in Paris, New York, and Hollywood. It is very, very short and has a lot of plot in about 2 or 3 pages. And while the story of this Victorian lady having all these crazy adventures is really interesting, I couldn't help but think, why is all of this happening to her all at the same time? And everything would always work out for her. I liked the concept, I liked the drawings, I really liked the balance of text and pictures, but also felt like it was a bit too short and perhaps a bit rushed. Number 8 is Anthony Horowitz's Alex Rider Point Blank graphic novel. I used to read these books all the time when I was about 14. It's about this British 14-year-old boy who becomes a spy, and he gets all these really cool gadgets like a Game Boy that has like a laser cutter inside of it. At first I thought that this was the book that was also made into a movie. I've read that book and I've seen the movie a couple of times, so I didn't really want to relive that story. This is actually another one where he has to go to a boarding school, so I decided to read it anyway. I wasn't really a fan of the drawings or the colors in this, but they had a very interesting way of placing all the different images on the page, which you can see here in some of the action scenes. Lots of explosions. Another thing that was really creative is when they're having a conversation, you have all these cutout faces with the dialogue, and then the thing that they're actually talking about is shown in images in between them. It's pretty fast-paced, which is quite understandable, and the bad guys really look like the typical bad guys, but if you like these books, then this is a good one to read. And I think this is also great for kids that are a bit younger. Then we have Coraline by Neil Gaiman, and this might come as a surprise, but I've never read the book and I haven't seen the movie either, so this was completely new to me. The drawing style is very realistic, and the coloration was something that I thought I wouldn't really enjoy, but it ended up fitting with the story really well. They try and do something with the typography sometimes, like when she's walking down the stairs, the text will kind of be in the shape of steps, but that only happens in about 10 images. The best thing about this was the story, which is amazing, especially if you've never read it before. It's basically about this girl who goes through a secret passageway where she meets her other parents. Her other parents have buttons for eyes and they keep her actual parents prisoner. The other mother in this is absolutely terrifying. This was really creepy, way creepier than the movie. This was one of the graphic novels that I enjoyed most and I can highly recommend it. And then the very last one is Slow Storm. It's a story about a woman called Ursa who is a firefighter and a boy called Rafi who is an illegal immigrant. He gets in some trouble and they meet each other, and that's basically the storyline. It's not very complex, but that's not the reason why this one is so good. There's a very small amount of text, there is some Spanish, but what I really loved is the beautiful watercolor drawings and the very gritty drawing style. It's very powerful and has a really creative way of showing dreams and emotions. It's really beautiful. If you're looking for something that's a bit different, then I can definitely recommend this one. I'm actually considering buying my own copy of this because I would love to own it and reread it. I'll put links to the Goodreads page in the description, and also put links there to the Book Depository where you can buy these graphic novels if you want. In the comments you can let me know if you've read any of these and if you like them, and I'll see you guys later. Doei! Hello, me cool.